you work in a team, you've got to try Monday.com. Go to Monday.com and manage all your team's work on a powerful platform.
Tired of waiting in long car rental lines? Book a car instantly with Avail. All Avail car.
ExxonMobil can bring to this space to make the investments and to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere.
Delta, for example, or United has been one of those for Oxy. Have you been able to talk to corporates about this?
So I think that's the piece, that's the market demand piece that I was referring to. So companies that are in sectors that have difficulty decarbonizing are looking for opportunities to offset their carbon emissions, and we think that's an opportunity. So yeah, we'll be looking at that angle as well as the investment angle, bringing that together with our technology and then our projects capabilities, our operating experience in this space, and our facility footprint to see if we can't put those together and have a successful business that grows shareholder value.
Great, but you haven't talked to them yet, just to be totally clear on that?
So we established our low carbon solutions business on March. Business is now kind of coming up and running, and it's kind of in the early stages of engaging with these different forces that are coming together.
Darren, we really appreciate that and look forward to kind of tracking that progress as well. It is truly a historic shift for Exxon. Thank you very, very much. It was a sincere pleasure. Darren Woods, Exxon CEO. This is the Word.
It's extremely exciting for the university, for being historically black college university. It's just exciting for our engineers to actually allow to work for a large firm such as Boeing with such technologies. We can see the outcome.
Their CPG history, their experience, and really how we might be able to combine together to really create this fantastic public company. And so we kind of got into this factory a little bit before it became such a hot method of going public.
Five minutes away from the opening bell here in New York City, all counting down to Chairman Powell at 12 Eastern. Going into that, futures up a half a point, call it one. up not even a tenth of 1%, just about in positive territory after a really choppy couple of days in markets worldwide, particularly for big tech. Let's get you some morning calls and look at some of the analyst recommendations on Wall Street this morning. We begin first up with a call from the team over at Morgan Stanley, raising its GE price target to a street high, $17. The analyst expecting next week's Investor Day to serve as an important catalyst. The second call from Cowen, downgrading Planet Fitness to market perform with an $85 price target. The analyst expecting soft membership growth to drive negative comps this year. Their stock is down a little more than 2%. And your third and final call this morning, it comes from Piper Sandler, upgrading Qualcomm to overweight, a 160 price target. The analyst highlighting the stock's compelling entry point after February's sell-off. Their stock is positive by almost 1% to 132.90. That's through the calls. Coming up, recovery optimism and rising bond yields fueling the rotation out of tech stocks. That conversation still ahead with Chris Harvey of Wells Fargo and Casey Koninsky of Alpha Simplex. From New York, the opening bell up next this Thursday morning. Good morning. Futures just about negative now. This is Bloomberg.
Meet Chris and Mark. They've both heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum. While Chris is using eToro to trade top cryptocurrencies, Mark keeps getting cold feet. Chris follows and connects with other experienced traders on eToro. Mark is following the advice of Eugene, a friend who prefers to keep his money where he can see it. Do you feel like it, Mark? Join eToro and gain the confidence you need to trade crypto. eToro.
This is a real B&H customer story. Jack and Barbara, professional wildlife photographers and B&H customers for 30 years, live in remote Alaska. Hey, what's the population there?
About 50 to 52 people and bears.
We're definitely not New York anymore.
It's just quiet here. It's beautiful. The wildlife photography out here is amazing.
While they could order equipment from any number of sites, they don't.
Anytime we need anything, B&H is our go-to. We can send an email. We have used the chat feature and, of course, the phone if our phones are working.
If the phones are working.
Hi, Jack. What can I help you with?
I needed a tripod, and it had to be light. It had to be sturdy. So I talked with somebody at B&H. I think his name was Charles, and he pointed me toward a certain tripod and liked it so much that I bought a second one.
Nice one, Charles.
When it comes to getting gear, things were shipped quickly, packed well, made it through the harrowing journey, going from plane to smaller plane to somebody's hand, thrown to somebody else, put in the back of a truck, and arrives unscathed.
That's quite the schlep. It must be incredible when it gets there.
Oh, it's like Christmas. I mean, honestly, it's better than Christmas.
That's my birthday.
B&H has everything that we need. I mean, when have we ever looked for something that wasn't available?
Well, there was bananas.
Yeah, right.
Bananas indeed. Thanks so much for your B&H story. And please be careful out there.
I always tell Barbara, if I don't come back, just look for the circling magpies and ravens.
LWO1 WeatherNet. Look at that conditions.
TS is ready for launch. Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8.
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. It's Thursday, March 4th, and on screen is a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 3:24 a.m. Eastern Time.
This is a real B&H customer story. Jack and Barbara, professional wildlife photographers and B&H customers for 30 years, live in remote Alaska. Hey, what's the population there?
About 50 to 52 people and bears.
We're definitely not New York anymore.
It's just quiet here. It's beautiful. The wildlife photography out here is amazing.
While they could order equipment from any number of sites, they don't.
Anytime we need anything, B&H is our go-to. We can send an email. We have used the chat feature and, of course, the phone if our phones are working.
And we'll
If
talk
the phones are
more
working.
about that later on in the webcast.
I needed a tripod,
Tonight's
and it had
mission
to be
also marks the
light.
second
It had to
time
be
that we'll be
sturdy.
reusing our
So I
Falcon
talked to
9
somebody at
first stage
B&H.
for an
I think
eighth
his name
time.
was Charles, and
Falcon
he
9
pointed me
is
toward a
designed
certain
for 10 or
tripod
more
and
flights
liked
with
it so
minimal
much that I bought a
refurbishment in
second
between
one.
each flight.
Nice one,
And
Charles.
this mission
When
gets
it
us
comes
one
to
step
getting
closer
gear,
to that
things
goal.
were shipped
We're going to be
quickly,
attempting
packed
to recover the
well,
booster
made it
again on our
through the
drone ship. Of
harrowing
course, I
journey,
still love
going
you,
from plane
which
to
is
smaller
stationed off the
plane
coast
to
of
somebody's
Florida in
hand,
the Atlantic
thrown to
Ocean.
somebody
There it
else,
is
put
on
in the
screen
back
right
of a
now.
truck, and
If
arrives
we are
unscathed.
successful, it
That's
will mark
quite
the
the schlep.
75th
It must be
recovery
incredible
of
when
an
it gets
orbital
there.
class
Oh,
rocket.
it's like
And
Christmas.
if you were with us
I mean,
during the first
honestly,
launch
it's better
attempt
than
this past
Christmas.
Sunday,
Yeah, it's
you
my
know that we will
birthday.
not have first stage
B&H
use
has
during this
everything
flight,
that we
with the
need.
exception
I
of
mean, when
the
have we ever
stage
looked
one
for
landing
something
view
that wasn't
of the drone
available?
ship camera
Well,
that
there
you
was
just saw.
bananas.
However, we will still be receiving telemetry throughout the mission.
Bananas
So we'll
indeed.
make sure to
Thanks so
highlight
much for
any
your
first
B&H
stage
story.
events
And
as they
please be
happen.
careful out there.
I always
With
tell
that, we
Barbara
are
if I don't
T-minus
come
10
back,
minutes
just look
and
for the
45
circling
seconds
magpies
till
and
liftoff. All
ravens.
systems are green for an on-time liftoff at 3:24 a.m. Eastern Time.
Hi, I'm Yomizo, a Dragon propulsion engineer here at SpaceX. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 on historic launch pad 39A. And while this pad has seen a lot of launches, including the first moon mission in 1969, tonight will be the first time that this particular booster is flying from pad 39A. All 7 of this booster's previous flights lifted off just down the road at Space Launch Complex 40. Now, Falcon 9 stands 70 meters tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft, and there are 9 M1D engines on the first stage, which is the bottom two-thirds of the vehicle there. The 9 Merlin engines on the first stage accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage separates from the rest of the rocket and begins making its way back to Earth to land on our recovery vessel. Of course, I still love you, as you see on your screen. Now, while Falcon 9 is named for the 9 engines on the first stage, there are actually 10 engines on the rocket. The Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC, is what powers the second stage of Falcon 9 to its targeted orbit. The MVAC can generate about 220,500 pounds of thrust at full power and can be restarted multiple times to place different payloads into different orbits. Tonight we are flying 60 Starlink satellites, which are safely enclosed in the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is that pointed structure you see at the very top of the rocket.
So while
This
everybody
protects
else
the
is hearing
payload
about a
from
big
aerothermal
market
loads,
explosion on the news
heating,
the day
and contamination
after
during
they
ascent.
happen, my
Once we
system is
reach the
able to
vacuum
alert
of
me the
space,
day
we no longer
before.
need the fairing,
If you
so we
click this
jettison
ad
it
right
as
now,
the
I'll
second
show you
stage
how you can
continues
start
on its journey
receiving
to
my
orbit.
Blitz alerts today.
Today will be
So,
the first
you can
time that
be on
we
one
are
of the
reusing
trades like
one of our
these that
fairing
could have
halves
made
for
you
the 4th time. The other half will be
$24,840 in just
flying
7
for the
days.
3rd time.
Like one morning
Our
when I
recovery
noticed
ships
a shadow
Go
blitz for
Searcher
Nordstrom.
and Go
So I
Navigator are
immediately
currently
sent out a
stationed
blitz
in
alert
the
to my
Atlantic
members.
Ocean and
Then
will
I
pull
pulled
the
out
fairing
my own
halves
phone
from
and
the
placed a
water
simple trade
upon
on
landing.
Nordstrom. And then
And with
there
that,
was
let's
nothing
check
else for me
in
to
to
do.
see how the
So I
countdown
went
is
fishing.
progressing.
Sure enough, the stock
We are
exploded
just under
overnight.
8.5
And if you
minutes until
invested
liftoff,
$1,000
and leading
with me,
into
you could have
tonight's launch,
reeled
the
in
chief engineer held a technical poll at the T-minus 1 hour mark, and then
Later
the launch
that
director
week,
held
you
a
could have been
propellant load and launch
receiving
go-no-go
another
poll
Blitz alert.
at the
Join
T-minus
me in
38
investing
minute mark.
$1,000
Since then,
of
Falcon
your
9 has
profit
been
into
loading
Dollar
propellants
General.
since the
After
T-minus
forgetting about
35 minute mark.
everything in the
The
stock
vehicle
market,
uses two
instead
types of
spend the next
propellant,
day
a fuel
relaxing
and
with
an
your family.
oxidizer.
You could have
For
woke up
fuel,
the following morning
we
to
use a refined form of kerosene called
$7,330
RP1,
automatically in
and
your
for its
account.
oxidizer,
And
we
the
use super
very
chilled
next
liquid
day, you would have
oxygen.
received the
We also
Blitz
refer to
alert
it
in
as
guest
LOX.
clothing. How do you
Currently,
put
RP1 is fully loaded
$1,000 in
on
the
the
guest
second
trade?
stage and
Spent the
nearly
day
fully loaded
golfing
on the first stage.
You
And
would have
as
came
for
back
liquid
12
oxygen,
hours
we're
later
loading
to
it
cash out on
right now on both stages.
$12,100 that evening.
We
If you
also load
joined me in those
helium
3 trades,
to the
you would have
vehicle, and that
collected the
began before the
easiest
webcast went live. We'll continue to top it off
$24,840
until about a
in your
minute
life.
and a half
If you
before
click
launch.
this ad
And
now,
we use
I'll
this
show you
helium
how
to
you get
maintain
started.
pressure
Cash it in
in
on
the tanks
4
as
and
propellant is
5-figure
consumed
profit
throughout the
paydays.
mission.
It's as easy as 1, 2, 3.
In about 25
When I
seconds,
detect a shadow
engine
blitz,
chill
I
will
know that
begin.
the
This is
market
where we allow
explosion
a
is
small
imminent.
amount
I'll
of
send you
super
an
chilled
alert.
liquid oxygen
Simply
to
wait
flow
for the
into
stock
the
to
Merlin
light up.
engine's
Green,
turbopumps
blitz.
prior to the
You
full flow
place
of
the
LOX
trade. That's
to
it.
avoid any
You can
thermal
walk
shocks to the
away
system.
away from your
Around
desk,
the T-minus
spending the day
5
golfing,
minute and
doing
13
whatever
second
you
mark.
love.
Checkout of
Following
the
morning,
second
less than
stage
24
thrust vector
hours
control
later, you
actuators
come back to cash
will
out on
begin.
your
This is
win
also known as
while
the
you enjoy
engine
your
wiggle
morning
test.
coffee.
We'll
You don't
initiate
even
these
manually
slight
have to
movements
close out
to
your
make sure that
trades.
the guidance
You can
hardware
have the
is a
money
go for flight.
automatically
The
deposited
first
straight into
stage
your
engines
account
also
instead.
perform the
It
same
couldn't be
exact
easier.
engine
You
wiggle
don't need to
test,
be
and
a
this
seasoned
happens
trader
just
to do
seconds
this.
before
You don't
ignition.
need to be chained at your
The
desk
vehicle
all
is
day.
healthy. We are
Anyone
currently
can do
working,
this.
no issues.
But just
The
don't take
range
my
is
word
standing
for it.
by and
Listen
currently
to what
green
some
for
happy
liftoff.
Blitz members
The
had
weather
to
is
say about my
also
Blitz
green
alerts.
for today's
Like
mission.
David,
All
David
systems
made
continue to be go for a liftoff
$497
at
and 50 cents
3:24
overnight
a.m.
from one
Eastern Time.
trade. Ooh. Jackson thanked me for a grand slam
Now,
that earned
Starlink was designed to help meet the
962.5%
growing need
of
for
pure
truly
profit.
high-speed,
And Larry,
low-latency
he was
broadband
excited
to
to see
underserved and unserved areas.
1,250%
One
profit
key
from his very
advantage of
first trade.
Starlink is the ability
When
to
you start
deploy the
tapping
system
into the
quickly.
shadow of
The
Blitz
Starlink
alerts,
kit
you could
contains
easily
everything
be the
that a
next
user
big winner.
needs to
And
get
I'm looking
connected
forward to
to the
hearing
internet,
about your
and once they
fantastic
have a kit
results.
in
So click
hand,
this ad
users
now
can be
to get
connected
started
in a
today,
matter of
and
minutes.
I'll see you on the inside.
For many communities that historically have had poor or non-existent access to the internet, the impacts of the current pandemic have made day-to-day life even more challenging. One such community is the Wise County Public School District in rural Virginia. Now, when COVID forced schools to close and resort to remote education, the community did not have the connectivity it needed to support distance learning for its students. According to a survey conducted by the school district, 40% of teachers and families in the area had limited to no access to internet. In December, the Wise County Public School District announced its plan to provide some families in the area with free Starlink service to promote remote learning. In January, we deployed the Starlink units to the community, and now over 40 homes are now connected with service. We are currently delivering beta service both domestically and internationally, and the team will continue to push towards near global coverage of the populated world in 2021. If you're interested in bringing Starlink to your home or your community, you can head over to starlink.com for more information.
We are currently 5 minutes from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. We're currently waiting for the Transport Erector, or TE, to retract away from Falcon 9. The Transport Erector is that white painted structure right next to the vehicle. In about 40 seconds, the clamp arms at the top of the vehicle will begin to open, and then the strong back will begin to recline away around the T-minus 3 minute and 39 second mark. And it will recline away about 2 degrees from Falcon 9 to its pre-launch position.
Strong back.
Catch highlights from the City
And you're
Lab
going to call
Global
us that we're
City Summit
beginning
this weekend
that
on
process.
Bloomberg Television.
The strong back won't fully
Conversations
reach that
surrounding
pre-launch position
cybersecurity,
until about
urban
the
planning and
T-minus 3 minute and 4 second mark.
Plus, special guest, U.S. Department of
The
Transportation
Transport
Secretary
Erector has
Pete
a few
Buttigieg
jobs. It provides
and Vice
liquids,
President of the
gases,
United States,
electric
Kamala
connections to the
Harris.
second stage,
Cities big
as
and
well as
small
air conditioning
are the
to the
heartbeat
payload
of our
fairing.
countries.
The City Lab Global
And
City
on screen
Summit
right now, you
this
can see
weekend on
the come to open up
Start
and
your mornings with Bloomberg Surveillance. Tom
prepare
Keene,
the Transport
Jonathan
Erector
Farrow,
to
and Lisa
decline away
Abramowitz.
from Falcon 9.
Extraordinary market day.
This rally just keeps
This
on going.
process,
But there
this
is
entire
a
process
tipping
should
point.
take
The business
about another
team
40 seconds or
love
so.
to watch. Weekday mornings on Bloomberg Television.
The first
This is a
and second
market that
stages are
over
both
the past
nearly
few
fully
weeks has made
loaded
it
with
clear
1
it wants
million
to go
pounds
higher.
of kerosene
It got a
fuel
little spooked
and
by the
liquid
idea that
oxygen. The
geopolitical
first stage should
tensions
finish
are rising.
propellant loading around the T-minus 3 minute mark, and the second stage should finish around the T-minus 2 minute mark.
25 seconds away from the
And there
opening bell
goes
in
the
New York
strong
City
back,
this morning. Good
beginning
morning
to
to all. We're
recline away
shaking up
from
as
Falcon
follows on the
9
S&P
to its
500,
pre-launch
coming
position
in just
about
a
2
little bit,
degrees
down
from
3
the
points and
vehicle.
off by almost a tenth of 1%. On a Nasdaq, off by 21 and down a little more than a tenth of 1% there as well.
And
Two
as we get
questions.
closer to T0 at
Will Chairman
T-minus
Powell
60
lead
seconds,
against the
Falcon 9
price action
is
in the
in
bond
startup.
market in
And
the
this
last
means that the
couple of
rocket's
weeks?
autonomous
And therefore,
internal
will
flight
Chairman Powell
computers
breathe
have
some
taken
life
over the launch
back into
countdown.
big tech? Switch
We'll
on the
then
board
light
to
the
the bond
Merlin
market
engines
we
around
go.
the
Yields
T-minus
were
2 second
lower
mark.
than they
We
were
use
higher.
T-TAB
And
as
lower
our
again by
ignition
basis
fluid,
points.
and when it
147 on
mixes with
10. Some
oxygen, it
stability
burns
going
a
into Chairman Powell's
green-colored
talk a
flame.
little bit later.
We then
12
allow the
Eastern.
fuel
In around
into the
about 2
thrust
hours
chamber, and
and
the
30
engine
minutes
comes to
time.
power
In the
for
FX
liftoff
market,
at
euro weaker,
T0.
euro dollar 120.34,
The Starlink
coming in a
payload
quarter of 1%.
continues
and
to be
crude
healthy.
just keeps
The
on
Falcon 9
rallying.
team is tracking no
62
issues
handle
on the
again on
rocket.
WTI.
Weather again
OPEC
remains
Plus
good, and the range is
getting
also
together
green for
once
launch.
again, 62.25 and up by 1.6%. That's the cross-asset story this Thursday with your movers at the market desk. Back with us, I'm pleased to say. Pretty good, sir.
Well, good morning, John. We're starting to see a little bit of a
And if you're
recovery in
just
those
joining
big
us,
tech
this is the
heavyweights after the New
20th
York Bang
Starlink
Index
mission
hit
for
correction
SpaceX
territory
and the
yesterday.
6th
All
mission
with the
overall
exception
in
of
2021.
Apple. You're seeing the UK Antitrust Authority opening up a probe into Apple's app payment rules. That weighing on the stock a little bit. On the upside, though, and it just turned green.
In just a
So
few
maybe
seconds
not
here,
so
we
much.
should
On
hear
the
the call
upside,
out
though,
that
you are
Lock's
seeing
loading
Amazon making some
has
strides
completed
in
on
their
the second
business, opening
stage,
their first
and that will
cashierless
wrap
store
up the
outside
propellant
of the
loading
U.S.
for the entire
and
vehicle for
negotiating
today's
an
mission.
exclusive streaming right with the NFL. You also have some positivity on the vaccine front. AstraZeneca getting cleared, their vaccine cleared in Germany for the elderly, and CureVac making a deal with Novartis to help manufacture up to 250 million doses. Flip up the boards. And I want to look at those recent outperformers, those big green energy names. All
You can start
taking
to
a little
hear
bit
some
of a
hissing
pullback today. Plug
and
Power
notice some white
extending their
clouds around
sell-off
Falcon
after
9.
it said it would
That
delay
is
some
normal for us
financial
at this
reports.
stage in the
Fuel said
countdown.
trading down,
We are
trading
venting
to the downside,
liquid
in
oxygen
sympathy.
through
You
the
also
transport
seeing some
erector
of those
lines,
commodity-related
and we'll
names,
continue to
Freeport
do so
McMoran
all
and
the way
Rio
down until
Tinto
T0.
taking a step back as well, despite those monster rallies that you saw in the past few days. And Johan, those are your market movers.
Pretty, thank you. About a minute and 42 seconds into the session, your S&P 500 just about positive, up 0.1%. Energy top of the pile, up by 1%. Information technology has been struggling, down another 0.2%. A huge rotation out of the high-flying tech stocks. The big names that you're all familiar with, the big performers of the last 12 months, really struggling. For the latest is Kelly Lyons. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, John, a lot of pain has been felt by big tech in the past few weeks.
Both
Higher and
stages are
higher
now beginning
treasury
to
yields, those
pressurize for launch.
valuations getting a little
In a
bit
few
harder
seconds here, we
to
should
reckon
hear the
with.
launch
For a long
director
time,
give
the
the
fact
final
that
go
the
for
tech
launch.
sector was trading at PE multiples last seen in the dot-com era was justified by the fact that we're in a low yield environment, that you can pay high multiples in the context of ultra-low borrowing
And there's the
costs.
final
So
go
as
for
borrowing
launch. Let's
costs
listen
creep
in
up,
to
that
terminal
argument
count
gets a bit
and watch
harder
as
to make.
Falcon
As a
9
result,
takes
the
our
Nasdaq
stack of
100 down
Starlink
in 9
satellites
of the
into
last
orbit.
13 sessions, even though it is fractionally higher in the first few minutes of trading right now. It's down about 8% from its peak reached last month, nearing correction territory as it hovers just around its lowest levels of the year thus far. And what has been leading the losses within the index are some of the biggest gainers in the prior 11 months. The pandemic winners, the momentum trades that really led this market higher are suddenly collapsing. Of the 6 best performing stocks in the Nasdaq 100 from March of last year through February of this year, 4 of them are among the biggest losers from February to now. That includes Peloton and Moderna, which are down 31 and 24% respectively. Drags on the index. Tesla and just 4 other stocks, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Qualcomm, have contributed to 73% of the 719-point loss in the Nasdaq 100 over the month we've just seen. Of course, it isn't just the Nasdaq that these names impact, John. They're heavily weighted within the S&P 500 as well. The tech sector making up 27% of the benchmark, and as a result, as tech has underperformed, we have seen the equal-weighted S&P 500, in which Apple just has the same weighting as a stock like
T
Under
plus
Armour,
40 seconds into
dramatically,
flight. It is dark, but we can definitely hear Falcon 9. We have successfully lifted off from pad 39 at Kennedy Space Center, carrying our stack of Starlink satellites into orbit. Right now, we're currently throttling down the engines in preparation for max Q. That is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure, where we'll experience the largest structural load
Looking at the index
on the
right now,
vehicle
the Nasdaq positive
during
by
ascent.
0.25%
So slowing the vehicle down helps during this
biggest
period.
two-day slide going back 6 months or so. Wedbush's Dan Ives taking advantage of the sell-off in tech and writing the following: "It's a golden opportunity to earn the secular tech
Max
winners
Q.
at compelling valuations. We
And
believe
there is the
that there's
call out for
another
max Q. We've
25%
just
upward
passed the
move
period of
in the cards
maximum
over the coming
aerodynamic
year."
pressure
Joining
on
us now to
Falcon 9.
discuss the spring of the team.
In
Chris Harvey
about
of
a
Wells
minute,
Fargo,
we have
Katie
3
Kaminsky
events
of
happening
Alpha
back to back.
Simplex. Katie, I want to
First
begin
up
with you
is
in this
main
vicious
engine
rotation
cutoff, also known
taking
as
place in the
MECO.
equity
This is
market.
where
Is it one
all
you want to stick
9
with?
Merlin engines on the first stage will shut off to slow the vehicle down in preparation for the second event, which is stage separation. During stage separation, the first and second stage will separate from one another, with the first stage starting to make its way back to Earth for a landing attempt on our drone ship, while the second stage continues its journey with the third event, Second Engine Start 1, also known as SES1. During Second Engine Start 1, this is where we'll light the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage and propel the second stage along with the Starlink satellites
from the
into
bond
orbit.
market into the equity market by
The
absolutely
first
hammering growth
event,
equities.
MECO,
Chris, this has been a story for
should
you
be
coming to the
happening
new
in
year. You know, we
about
had a massive rally at the
25
start of the year, and I
seconds.
joked with you, when are you lifting your price target? When are you lifting your price target? And you laughed in my face and said, I'm
There's
not.
an
Here's the
animation
story. And the
of where
story, Chris,
where Falcon 9 is
played out.
currently at.
How technically challenged
It's
is the
heading
headline
east
index on the
from
S&P
the coast of Florida.
500? And this struggle to break 3,900 on the S&P, is it a struggle we have to live with?
it is a struggle we're going to have to live with. This is something that we're going to deal with and talk about for some time, because the S&P 500 is a growth index, and as growth becomes abundant, that premium you pay for growth starts to compress. And as Katie mentioned, there's a duration component to all this. And so you could see the broader market just kind of rotate as financials and your and you saw the visuals on screen. The first stage separated from the second stage, making its way back to Earth. And we have a beautiful startup of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Coming up in a few seconds here is fairing deploy. Where tech really bounces, but overall, the recovery is coming. Rates, we believe, are going higher. This is not an environment that's really conducive to outperformance for growth and growth
off
stocks.
Goes the fairing. It's been so difficult, Chris, largely because of the weighting of Starlink satellites
on top of the second stage.
As a reminder, we will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today with our recovery ships Go Searcher and Go Amazon,
Navigator.
Tesla over the last month alone, we've been down really quite hard. Apple off by 10.5%, Amazon off by 8.6%, Tesla off by 22%. Chris, just a word to you. The research you published this morning, it's a stock picker's paradise. I know you can't do the single names with me live on air. Where'd you find them, Chris?
After that beautiful launch that we just barely couldn't see, stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit. Stage 1 is going to execute 2 burns in order to make its way back down to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite, and this will help slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn. Now, this is a single engine burn that will bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on our drone ship. Of course, I still love
COVID becomes more manageable, but is less picked over and has
acquisition of signal Bermuda.
You can see in that video there that our second stage is looking good.
It's been called a reopening trade.
Nozzle
it's been
is
called a reflation trade. What is it to you?
That it's currently
and walk me through the characterization, because I do think words matter. When people talk about reflation, is it a reflation trade? Is it just a huge surprise, upside surprise, positive
and again,
shock
our second stage
growth?
Is carrying our 60 Starlink satellites to LEO or low Earth orbit.
Because we've been watching
That's
this
about
trade since last
550
summer.
kilometers
It was sort
above
of this
the surface
headwind
of the Earth.
that occurred and what we're kind of thinking of as
For
the
reference,
great
most
fiscal
satellites are
experiment.
actually in
And
GEO
so
or
what we're worrying about
geostationary
is as we
orbit,
pump
which is
more
over
money
1,000
into the system,
kilometers
where
above
does the system
of
move?
the Earth.
And so we saw equities sort of humming along
And
and
the
doing
reason that
well,
we have
but we
our
started to see
Starlink satellites
massive
in this
moves
lower
in other
orbit
asset
is that
classes
it
like the
reduces
dollar
the
and
round trip
also
time that it
commodities.
takes
And so
for
the
data
reason why
to
the
travel
Fed, for
between the
example,
user
had
and
to
the
come out and
satellite,
make comments is
reducing
so
what is
many
known as
people are
latency
watching
and
this
improving
reflation in
performance
terms of
in
massive
activities like
resurgence
video
and
calls
prices
and
of
online.
things that we're going to need down the line for the products that we make in the manufacturing industry and other things that are important to us. So as an example, copper, oil, many of these sort of
you
core,
can't quite see the first stage,
core products and
but
commodities have really
coasting
moved.
down,
And so
getting
that
ready
is sort of
for
a
the
leading
start
indicator
of
of something
entry
that's
burn
getting
in
us a
about
little
40
concerned
seconds
about
here.
when reflation
using
loses its
its
RE
4
or becomes a
hypersonic
potential
grid pins
risk
and the
for
occasional
inflation.
burst of
This
nitrogen
bond move
gas
last week
from
was
its
just sort of
attitude control system.
a wake-up call that, hey, this is something that we really do need to think about.
Copper moving the other way today, down by 1.9%. Crude still positive, Katie, up by 1.7 on Brent, on WTI by 1.5. Chris, I know we're having some problems with his shot, but I understand we still have the audio, so I want to continue the conversation with you, sir. A lot of people come on shows like this and put the financials and the energy plays into the same bucket
here,
as we reopen this economy and drive forward. Do you think that's
looking
smart?
good with our Starlink satellites.
A lot of people do it. You are right. We
There's
do
a
it
call out
slightly
for
differently.
stage
We
1
do it on a
entry burn
risk-reward
startup.
basis. When you look
Again,
at
the entry
energy,
burn will last about
energy
20
is high
seconds.
risk, high reward. When you look at financials, we think it's a better risk reward. It's more moderate. You don't need a lot of things to really go right. But with energy, you're still dealing with challenged balance sheet. And so we prefer
Stage 1
banks and
entry burn
financials
shutdown.
because they can work as interest
We've
rates
had
go higher.
confirmation
It's a
of a
great capital give
successful
back story.
stage 1
We think the
entry
capital
burn.
market story is also
And
very
if you've been
positive.
following
and
SpaceX
valuations look
news,
attractive.
this is actually
If
the
we're going to have a
second
reinflation, if
landing
we're going
that
to have
we
a
are
recovery,
attempting in the
obviously
past 12
energy should
hours.
participate and is participating, but there's a lot more
The
risk in
first
that
one
story.
being our
and we
Starship
generally look for
serial
your
number
best risk
10,
rewards,
which
and that's more in your bank and
successfully
financials
landed
than
in
on your
South
energy side,
Texas
if that
just
makes sense.
earlier
10
this
minutes
afternoon.
in, S&P 500 in positive territory, yields coming about a basis point, bit of
And
stability.
again,
Katie,
our
I wanted give
first
you the final
stage is
word here, if
designed
I may.
to be
Core call right
reflown
now,
10 or more times
cross-asset.
with
You
minimal
do a great job of looking
refurbishment
across
between
the
flights,
world,
and
looking
this is
cross-asset
the
right now. What's
8th
the core
flight
call for
that
you and
this
the team?
particular first stage
I mean, I think
has
that the
been
biggest
on.
call right now is how does the
In
reflation
comparison with
trade
Starship,
change?
our
So, for
Starship
example,
vehicle is
is this going
designed
to
to
be a
be
story
fully
more about
reusable.
energy versus outperforming some of our precious metals? How are we going to continue to see the bond trend move? And my
Second
side,
stage
I'm seeing a
continues
lot of
to
short
look
signals
good,
on bonds.
and
So
we are less
I'd
than
say
30
watch out.
seconds now
Bonds
from
might
the
be
start of our
something to
landing.
worry as opposed to something that's a safe haven going forward.
Kelly, great work as always. Kelly Kaminsky there. And Chris Harvey, thank you. And sorry, I gave him such a hard time at the start of the year with that price target. Chris, good to see you, mate. Chris Harvey and Kelly Kaminsky, thank you.
Stage one,
Let's get back to the
landing burn
market
startup.
desk and get you some movers. Here's Kaylee.
Well, John, a few
You heard the call
earnings-related
out for
movers
our
to keep an
start
eye
of
on. One of them,
landing
Purple
burn.
Innovation,
This
the
will be about
mattress
20
company,
seconds.
sinking
Hopefully
more
we'll
than
get a
20%
great
after
video
a
from our
double miss.
drone ship.
Revenues
Of
coming in
course,
about
I still
11%
love you.
below
You can
expectations.
see it
Earnings
there
per
on your
share
left.
by about 40%. That stock is down right now
Stage
about
one, landing
21%
leg deploy.
as a result. Also, a disappointing outlook from Vroom, expecting a much wider loss than analysts saw in the first quarter. 68 cents a share, whereas the street was only looking for a 37 cents a share loss. The shares are down 22.5% as a result.
Stage two,
Also down, but
FTS
not
is
quite
safe.
as sharply as
Looks
Okta.
like
A
we've
tepid
briefly
outlook, but
lost the
also
video.
an
Hopefully
acquisition
we can
buying
get a
rival IT
confirmation
software
here
maker
soon about
Auto for
whether or
$6.5
not
billion
the first stage
in an
has
all-stock
successfully
deal. Investors
landed.
don't like it. Those shares down about 6%.
Meanwhile, second stage
Speaking
is
of
still
deals, a few
looking
others
good.
making news and moving markets this morning. United Natural Foods
We did
extending
just have
its partnership with Whole
confirmation
Foods
of
until
our
September
successful stage
2027.
one landing.
Whole Foods right now
This will mark
comprises
our
17%
75th
of the company's
successful
sales, so that
recovery
is
of
good
an
news to
orbital
investors,
class
bidding the
rocket,
stock up
the
by about
8th recovery of
14%.
this particular
DraftKings is up by
booster,
about 2%
and
after reaching
our
an agreement to
second
become
landing
the
in the past
exclusive
12
sportsbook for
hours.
UFC
Again, this
in
is the
both the
second
US
time
and
that
Canada.
we've
And finally,
recovered a
CureVac
booster for the
inking a
8th
pact with
time.
Novartis for the
And
company
in
to
just a
produce
few
its
seconds here,
COVID-19
you're going to hear
vaccine
the
candidate.
call out
Could boost the
for
supply of the
well,
shot
we
by
just
as much
had
as
a call
250
out for
million doses
CECO 1,
over
in
the
fact,
course of
for
this year,
our
and
second
the next
stage,
CureVac is
and
higher
a
by nearly 3%
confirmation for a good
on that news,
orbit.
John.
Kelly,
And
thank
now
you.
that
Coming
stage
up,
2
President Biden's
is
stimulus
going
package
to
heading to the
coast
Senate
in this
with a final
orbit for
vote
the
likely
next
being pushed
35
into the
minutes or
weekend. That
so.
conversation
And while
up
that
next with Debbie
happens, we'll
Cunningham
take a look
of
at this
Federated Hermes.
animation
From New York City,
showcasing where we
this
are
is
in the
Bloomberg.
coast phase, and we'll see you back here at T plus 45 minutes for a second stage relight.
Women leaders were actually better at controlling the deaths from COVID-19. Do you think out of this pandemic, we'll see more countries be willing to elect female leaders?
When we look at women leaders, we tend to project on them baggage that they shouldn't bear.
Women are given an opportunity when no one else wants to do the job.
Women had a very clear objective. They wanted to save lives.
The women leaders, if you look at their careers, have also built up a level of trust.
In fact, women have to be better at communication in order to be elected as leaders, whereas this doesn't hold true for men.
We need to get those sexist stereotypes out of our head and give women a fair run for leadership.
Trying to change the stereotypes about women is not only the business of women, but men have to be part of it.
What kind of leader are you?
I'm a leader that works on figuring out destinations that we should aim for and then chooses the direction.
Expected loss of signal, Bermuda.
The American Rescue Plan is designed to build on our early progress and finish the job. Whatever our Republican colleagues decide to do, the Senate majority is intent on going forward and helping the American people. with bold action quickly.
The Senate entering the final stages of stimulus debate with the chamber eyeing a weekend vote. Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli joining us down in D.C. for the latest. Morning, Kev.
Good morning, Jonathan. Look, 3 quick points. First and foremost, I'm not sensing that there's going to be any major policy procedural hurdle that would thwart President Biden from signing this sometime, if not over the weekend, then early next week. But again, secondly, I would note here that the debate was set to begin last evening. That was delayed. So that could push this into the weekend. And then finally here, thirdly, tomorrow's Jobs Day, and President Biden is already looking for the next item on his policy agenda. Today at the Oval Office, he's going to be meeting with a bipartisan group of lawmakers on infrastructure. The bottom line, they feel that the stimulus part of their policy agenda is really a done deal. And so they're moving on to infrastructure beginning in earnest today.
Kevin, I just wonder how he works with the governors going forward on a whole range of issues, including infrastructure, and Texas very much in focus right now. You and I talked about the reaction from the administration to Governor Abbott reopening the state. Take a listen to what President Biden had to say.
I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, to get every adult American to get a shot.
So, Kevin, Tom Keene asked the question yesterday, and I think it's an important one. Who's the next Texas? And I just wonder whether the president and this administration can get the governors on the same page about the path forward this year.
He can't. And look, I mean, I would even take it to a Democratic-controlled state in New York when you've got Broadway announcing that starting in April, they're going to be coming back on the Great White Way for limited engagements. I mean, I bring this up not as a laughing matter, but the momentum now is behind reopening, especially when President Biden earlier this week said every adult American in the United States can be vaccinated by the end of May.
And the rate is flying. Kevin, good to see you. 2.0 something million right now, just north of 2 million. That's your daily average over the last 7 days. Absolutely phenomenal. You throw in the $1.9 trillion fiscal stimulus plan. Things get interesting in this market, that's for sure. Debbie Cunningham of Federated Hermes expecting stimulus spending to alleviate pressure on the curve. She writes the following. The fiscal stimulus package will likely be financed in part through additional supply of treasury bills. This will ease supply strains at the front end of the yield curve. Debbie, I'm pleased to say, joins us now. Debbie, let's start there. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this outside of fixed income. We've all been seeing yields flying out on the 30-year, 10s on a 7-year, the auction last week, messy. Walk me through what's been happening with T-bills in the very front of the curve.
Well, certainly T-bills have not benefited from any type of backup. The curve at this point is maybe 5, 6, 7 basis points steep on any given day, and it is driven by Fed policy. And that Fed policy still has the RRP rate anchored at 0 and IOER at 10 basis points. So you've got really two things that can impact that, and that is a potential change in Fed policy on those two key important rates, or some sort of technical factor, and that would be supply driven. So as additional supply comes into the front end of the market, the bill market in particular, in order to help finance this next stimulus package, hopefully from our standpoint, that means you see the 5, 6, 7 basis point steepness in the yield curve back up to something that's more 10 to 15 basis points in steepness.
Do you think you could kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and do Operation Twist, Debbie? It's something that's come up a couple of times with Fed speakers over the last couple of weeks. Is that an option or just not the optimal one in your mind?
I think it's very much an option. I mean, the Fed has said they don't need draconian types of measures. They don't need negative rates. They don't need, broadened stimulus packages. But I think making adjustments like an Operation Twist would absolutely be beneficial for some aspects of the longer term fixed income sector.
Debbie, just going through your core position right now, it's just high quality, front end commercial paper. Can you walk me through how you're thinking about how you approach this market at the moment?
Certainly, floaters are out of vogue at this point. They have been a stalwart for liquidity products over decades, but because of the LIBOR cessation issues at this point, and the SOFR benchmark replacement not necessarily having a credit or a yield curve component to it yet, floaters have been out of favor, and as such, I think a lot of people are focusing on the shorter end of the fixed income, high quality sector to be able to basically keep powder dry so that as supply or technical adjustments come and the money market yield curve steepens out, there is a capability then of taking some of the reinvestments from those short-term fixed income or fixed products out into maybe the 6 to 9 to 12 month sector of the liquidity curve and gaining a little bit more from a spread and a duration standpoint in that move.
Are you expecting a little bit more incrementally speaking, like last week, for instance, just a little bit more rate volatility, Debbie, as we go through the months ahead, the year ahead, and get the inflation that so many people expect?
Well, it's interesting. Rate volatility can be measured in basis points or it can be measured in percentage terms. And when you have a 2 basis point change in a 25 basis point environment, it's a pretty substantial move. Whereas if you're looking at something that's a 1 or a 2% environment, two basis points means nothing. So I do think in the terms of percentage volatility in the marketplace, we will continue to see some spread developments as well as some supply developments that cause some volatility in that sector.
Appreciate the clinic at the front end, Debbie. Really do. Thanks for joining us. Debbie Cunningham there on the latest in this market. Right now, we turn lower on the Nasdaq, off by 6/7 of 1%, on the S&P by 0.2 of 1%. A little more than 2 hours away from Chairman Powell. With your movers, your sector price action. Here's Kaylee.
Well, John, it's a mixed picture from a sector point of view, but once again, it is energy at the top. The sector up another 0.9 of 1% or so, outperforming once again. You also have communication services and consumer staples higher on the day. At the bottom of the barrel, though, information technology down about 0.75%, and materials getting hit hard by the sharp sell-off in industrial metals. And we look over the last 2 weeks, as we have seen the dramatic sell-off in bond markets and the move higher in treasury yields, it is big tech and bond proxies that have been the biggest losers. Consumer discretionary, which of course is heavily weighted toward Amazon and Tesla, has sunken about 7.5%. Information technology by about 5.8%. Utilities and consumer staples down about 6 and 3.3% respectively, John.
Kelly, thank you. Coming up, Chairman Powell, just a couple of hours away. The market moving events you need to be watching. That'll be next in our trading diary. From New York City this morning, good morning. 23 minutes in, we turn just a little bit lower on the S&P, down 0.5 of 1% on the Nasdaq. This is Bloomberg.
Access the financial world on demand. Hear from leading economists, policymakers, and industry experts via live and on-demand webinars, only from Bloomberg. Start exploring to see what's moving the markets. Visit Bloomberg.com/webinars.
Global markets never sleep, so stay connected with Francine Lacqua in London, Matt Miller in Berlin, and Kaylee Lyons in New York. Perspective on the day ahead. Bloomberg Surveillance, early edition. Weekday mornings on Bloomberg Television.
We heard from Chairman Powell last week twice, Tuesday, Wednesday. Feels like an absolute lifetime ago. He seemed comfortable with what was happening in the bond market. Called it a statement of confidence. Was he comfortable with Thursday? Was that a statement of confidence? You'll find out in about 2 hours and 5 minutes, I guess, when we hear from him a little bit later. Guy Johnson, Alex Steele will beat the drum into that event a little bit later this afternoon, 12 Eastern. That's when that's taking place. Your market right now, 25 minutes in, we decline on the S&P by a little more than 1/10 of 1%, down by 0.17. On the Nasdaq, once again, tech is having a tough time. The Nasdaq off by 0.7 of 1%. Here's your trading diary then, what you need to be watching this week. Factory orders at the top of the hour. Then it's the big one. Fed Chair Jay Powell speaking at noon Eastern. Plus, President Biden discussing infrastructure with members of the House. And closing out the week on Friday with the payrolls report coming up tomorrow morning. Your estimate 195, your range anywhere from negative 35 to positive 500K. Get a dart, throw it on a board. I know a lot more goes into it than that. It's complex, I'm told. But it feels like a guesstimate right now for this economy. Much more still to come from New York City. This was the countdown to the open for our audience worldwide. Continue the conversation on Twitter at Fero TV. This is Bloomberg.
Expected loss of signal, Goonhilly.
Our generation's biggest problem.
Climate change is happening.
And the world's most innovative solution.
Transport, industry, buildings, electricity, all of those things.
Everything you need to know about our changing environment, the politics of global warming.
We can and we will deal with climate change.
In the fight against climate change, Bloomberg Green has you covered.
Months after Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico is still in peril. Huge swaths of the island are still without power, running water, or access to medical care. Experts estimate that it will take years before these services are restored island-wide. Much of the blame has been placed on FEMA for a slow response in comparison to recent disasters on the mainland. But recovery from a disaster of this complexity and scale has proven more challenging than anyone anticipated. And filling the gaps between an overextended public sector and a suffering populace falls on the private citizens. Robert Anderson is a Puerto Rico resident of 4 years.
The eye of the storm came in south of El Yunque, swept up towards San Juan, and out to Arecibo. Everything on the right-hand side is what we call the dirty side of the storm.
This isn't his first time in a disaster zone. With a military and telecom background, Anderson worked on repairing damaged cell phone towers in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Some might be tempted to label him a disaster capitalist, seeking lucrative government contracts for his expertise. But as Anderson finds himself in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, he and his associates are developing a variety of pro bono recovery projects that target the island's hardest hit areas.
I see two Puerto Ricos. We're here in San Juan. They have telecommunications restored. They may or may not have power, but basic services are in place. They're able to get food. They're able to buy things. They're surviving. And when you look outside of the San Juan area, you can go 15 minutes from here and find areas that are devastated. I'm working on the devastated side.
Today, he's put together a boots-on-the-ground mission to provide medical care to some of the island's most isolated and vulnerable residents. Steve Berenbaum is one of Anderson's business associates. He offered an extra car and a set of hands.
So we received an initial report from a nurse that was out in the area. We're headed to the northeast region of Utuado for some people that are in need of urgent medical assistance.
Dr. Sally Priester is a physician from San Juan. She filled a van with medical supplies at her own expense and brought along a team of nurses. Google Maps estimated our first destination to be a 90-minute drive. But it didn't account for obstacles like this. Our first stop was the home of an 82-year-old blind Vietnam veteran. His roof was blown off by the storm, and he's been living alone in a back shed for nearly 2 months.
His cane actually got broken in the storm, so he's limited mobility. He has a number of medical ailments. Dr. Priester's having a look at him. He called the VA. They're going to get him set up with what he needs, get him stabilized so he can be transported either to an evacuation center or off the island. It's when the chain gets broken, when those families that are connected to them leave the island or take off. These guys get left at the end of the road, and it's tough.
FEMA was not officially part of Robert's team, and their arrival caught everyone by surprise. Their job here was to survey and report back to their superiors, and did not come with medical aid of any kind.
People think that FEMA is there to hand out bottles of water. It's not what they do. FEMA has a role to play. They have a very specific role. They bring in ships, they bring in airplanes, they bring in tractor trailers with pallets of things. But they're a big machine, and there's gaps in that thing. And you're seeing one of the gaps here, and we help fill that role. These guys are in a bad situation before, and now they're struggling for real basic things. One of the risks that you run is people going from fear to hopelessness. Those are the folks that we're trying to reach.
And how are they reaching out?
Word of mouth, mostly.
And what's your role in all of this?
Goes to the machine. I'm lucky enough to be able to communicate with folks in FEMA, the state of Puerto Rico.
For a ghost, Robert makes his presence well known. Not only was he the de facto leader of the mission, now with FEMA in tow, he created his own maps to survey storm damage and delivered them to FEMA HQ free of charge.
I have pretty good reach.
Perhaps that's how he managed to earn himself a coveted FEMA badge without actually working for them. And it's these relationships that allow him to operate more efficiently than an NGO or a government agency.
We're able to resolve problems at a different level.
Our next stop was on a mountaintop, a family of 11 struggling to care for their special needs brother in what was left of their house.
Actually, we are the first health team to come and visit this family.
Muy bien, todo muy bien.
The patient has Down syndrome. He's all day in bed. The difficulty with this is the patient cannot be alone. The most important thing is that you need to take care of the chronic disease. Have been not going to a doctor. No doctor has come in here yet.
So we need a replacement.
After maybe 54 days, it's not getting better. And the only way that you can be able to see that is coming to the ground, drive, and see the people and talk to the people.
You can see San Juan from here, but you can't get there. It's like the Emerald City.
On this stop, we caught word that a man living alone at the edge of the jungle was in need of care.
So we decided to take a little detour, come up here and check out and see what's going on. One of the challenges is to find those people that are at the end of these roads that need help.
¿Pero por qué estás solo? ¿Por qué estás por acá? I'm asking about why he's alone right here. He said things of life happens. You know, I'm here. By myself. So ¿dónde vive acá? En la parte de acá. This is not a job. To do this, you need to have passion for what you can do. You're not going to get paid.
It's said in disaster response and emergency response that the real first responders are your neighbors. You don't need to wait for a lucrative FEMA contract to go out and do good and to help the community.
Leanne, do you feel like you're making a difference?
Lives you touch and people that you can affect. I don't really think about it in those terms.
But why do you do it?
It helps me sleep at night. I think it's as much for the people that are going out to help and do things as it is for the people that you affect.
Whether out of altruism, or the lure of a paid gig, or some mixture of the two, Anderson hopes to stay here to help shape Puerto Rico's future.
Puerto Rico has essentially been a colony for 400 years. It was treated poorly by the Spanish. It was not treated well by the United States when they first got here. Puerto Rico can continue in the way that it's always been, or Puerto Rico can rebuild itself like nothing that's ever been. And we have to do everything we can to make that real. That's the bottom line.
Acquisition of Signal Reef.
When I met him first online, I found him to be really sweet. I think I was the one who was talking for an hour. He was just listening.
When we met, I saw her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, which was, I mean, something that I was looking for.
Anshu and Sumit are one of about 12 million couples that get married in India every year. Unlike their parents' generation, they're not from two close villages, but from two cities on opposite sides of the country. And their love didn't start through community matchmaking, marriage brokers, or classified ads in newspapers, but began online.
So we met through jeevansati.com. So it's basically an online portal where we have detailed profile of different grooms and brides.
It makes a lot of remote profiles who are located in distant areas more accessible.
Thanks to growing internet and smartphone usage, matrimony websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more people are finding their partners at the click of a mouse. jeevansati.com, where Anshu and Sumit met, is one of the biggest players. Young Indians looking for love set up profiles including their caste and horoscope, but their criteria for choosing spouses appears to be changing.
We have seen the shift from traditional caste community conservative parameters to something like which is more focused on education, employment.
Anshu and Sumit's marriage was initiated by their parents, but modern Indian couples like them have more input than previous generations.
We looked up to them to agree for the proposal, but it was primarily our decision that we wanted to be with each other.
You use the most to each other?
There's a bear which basically we use for indicating a hug.
Yeah, that's our language basically. Bear I can
Time flies when you're in love, and just 1.5 months after they first met online, the couple got engaged. They decided to hold their wedding less than 3 months later. But planning a traditional Hindu wedding on such short notice is no easy task. The massive event usually lasts 3 days, has various ceremonies and celebrations, and involves the entire two families and hundreds of guests. Luckily, there are websites and apps for that.
We searched online, we got in touch with Wedding Brigade, and they helped us finalize the venue, and it makes the search faster and efficient.
Startups like the Wedding Brigade are challenging traditional wedding planners in this $50 billion industry. It provides various services from booking banquet venues to buying wedding gowns. The website makes money by charging commission from vendors.
People don't want to be limited to what is available around them. They want to know the entire range of options available before making a decision. And now it's easy to find almost everything on one portal.
Anshu and Sumit are officially married in a ritual that has gone on for thousands of years, but their love started in a very new way. Technologies might be changing the way couples meet, date, and get married in India, but they're definitely not changing everything.
The technology was only the first level help that we could get to find each other. Everything else was like very humanly and emotions and feelings based.
welcome back to the webcast for Starlink Mission 20. If you're just joining us, we had successful liftoff at 3:24 a.m. Eastern from Pad 39A in Florida. We had successful stage separation and recovered our first stage for the 8th time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. We're now finishing up the first coast phase and waiting on the relight of our second stage or second engine start 2. It's going to be a very short 1-second burn of our NVAC engine there on screen. And that's going to be happening in about 10 seconds. And this here is an animation of where we're at, where the second stage is at around the globe. Hopefully we can get footage of the second stage back for that 1-second relight. And just like that, successful startup and shutdown. And now we're waiting for confirmation of a good orbit for the second stage. We don't hear the callouts, but I am hearing from the teams that we do indeed have a good orbit. We have another 20-minute coast phase before we deploy our batch of Starlink satellites into orbit. During this time, the spacecraft will start to spin along its central axis, giving these Starlink satellites the momentum they need to space themselves out over time after they deploy. And while this happens, sit back and enjoy the space jams. We'll see you back here at T+1 hour and 4 minutes.
Expected loss of signal, Diego Garcia. Good deploy orbit insertion.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has become a symbol of everything the Republican Party stands against.
Everyone gets a right to basic health care. We need strong oversight of these banks.
A legal scholar and a consumer advocate turned politician, Warren has branded herself as a champion of the working class and made a career out of standing up to big business. While rumors of a 2020 presidency bid remain just that,
I'm not running for president.
her Senate seat is up for re-election in 2018, and Republicans are already pumping millions into super PACs to defeat her. This is the story of how a law professor and politician came to be seen as the biggest threat to Republican values and the greatest hope for progressive America. Elizabeth Warren was born Elizabeth Ann Herron, the youngest of three siblings, on June 22, 1949, in Oklahoma City to middle-class parents. After waiting tables to help her family pay the bills, Warren became a star on the high school debate team. She landed a scholarship to George Washington University at the age of 16, but 2 years later dropped out to marry her high school sweetheart, Jim Warren. By 1980, Warren was a mother of two, divorced and remarried, had earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Houston, a juris degree from Rutgers, and practicing law in New Jersey. Warren then went on to become an influential law professor, teaching, lecturing, and publishing highly cited work on bankruptcy and commercial law at 7 universities around the country, eventually settling at Harvard Law School. But Warren wasn't always a liberal lion.
Elizabeth Warren used to be a Republican, actually.
That's Stephen Dennis.
I'm a Senate reporter for Bloomberg. Around the time that Elizabeth Warren switched parties, she became a fierce opponent of a Republican drive to make it much harder to file for bankruptcy. She fought that for a decade. It ended up passing anyways.
While her efforts ultimately failed, her warning calls were heard in 2008.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis. Our entire economy is in danger, and without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into a financial panic, and a distressing scenario would unfold.
Professor Warren was tapped to help with oversight in the government bailout.
She would excoriate bankers and their bonuses and their practices.
Why should the U.S. taxpayer alone carry sick?
She proposed a series of tough regulations, which became the basis for much of the Dodd-Frank financial law that we have today. That sort of catapulted her to national stardom, particularly among the progressive left.
Encouraged by her newfound notoriety, Warren declared her bid for the U.S. Senate on September 14, 2011. Heritage, a controversy that earned her the nickname
Pocahontas.
Nevertheless, she was victorious and won the Senate seat by a comfortable margin. Of Wall Street and Congress.
I'm really concerned that too big to fail has become too big for trial. We need tough new laws to hold corporate executives personally accountable. No one should be above the law.
She called for Wells Fargo CEO John Stump to resign for fraud, introduced the Bank on Student Loans Fairness Act, and reintroduced the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act. In 2016, after staying silent during the Democratic primary battle, Warren finally endorsed Hillary Clinton and had some harsh words for candidate Trump.
Donald Trump is a loud, nasty, thin-skinned fraud who has never risked anything for anyone. And that is just one of the many reasons he will never be president of the United States.
But she was wrong.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Warren wasted no time resisting Trump's agenda.
Have you ever managed or overseen a $1 trillion loan program?
I have not.
How about a $1 billion loan program?
I have not.
In the Donald Trump era, Elizabeth Warren has been playing defense and trying to prevent Donald Trump and his cabinet appointees from rolling back protections that she helped enact.
Warren actually found herself rebuked by Mitch McConnell for reading a letter by Coretta Scott King about Jeff Sessions' record on racism during his confirmation.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
That moment became something that's on t-shirts, bumper stickers, slogans, and that really galvanized a lot of support for her. It's been very hard for Republicans to get much of anything done this year, and that's at least in part to this resistance movement that Elizabeth Warren has helped champion.
We are here to fight back.
Enough of Elizabeth Warren.
Millions of dollars are being funneled to defeat Warren in the midterm elections in 2018. But it's the rumors of a 2020 presidential bid that has further prompted powerful donors to fund her opposition, often using the same playbook of constant and ruthless ad campaigns that many believe helped Trump win in 2016. It's anyone's guess if she will endure what Hillary could not.
You know, the question for Elizabeth Warren is whether she can go from being a liberal firebrand to somebody who can regularly get 60 votes for initiatives in the Senate and 218 in the House and drive an agenda, and whether bring together coalitions for political victories. That's the challenge, and we'll see what happens.
Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has made some powerful opponents.
He doesn't know me, never met me, doesn't know what I'm all about. I think they're very rude statements, and frankly, tell him I will remember those statements.
My message to Donald Trump and his team is that, your views of Islam are ignorant.
He's the first Muslim mayor of a major Western capital and proud of it. This is how Sadiq Khan went from the son of Pakistani immigrants to a lawyer, lawmaker, and now the mayor of London. Khan's parents emigrated from Pakistan. His father was a bus driver, his mother a stay-at-home seamstress. The 10-strong Khan family squeezed into a 3-bedroom flat in South London. He wanted to be a dentist, but TV in the 1980s convinced him otherwise.
Objection!
LA law, with its swagger and ill-fitting suits, caught Khan's eye. He graduated in 1991 with a degree in law from North London University and joined a human rights firm. Khan worked a number of high-profile cases, often clashing with London's Metropolitan Police Force. But he had bigger political ambitions.
This is what being a new MP is like, squatting on a bench in the absence of an office, dealing with letters from constituents.
Reports are just coming in of an explosion here in London.
So there's just explosions, and then it just smoke everywhere.
Everyone's just asking what's happened.
Only 2 months after Khan entered the Commons as a Member of Parliament, London was attacked by Islamist extremists.
That day will stay with me for the rest of my life.
He spoke out against the attacks both as a London MP and as a Muslim.
He has been very clear about his opposition to violence, opposition to terrorism, and has set out to make the case for a more open and peaceful Islam.
That's Thomas Penny, one of Bloomberg's Westminster correspondents.
Here is a man who is a Muslim, and he is standing up and being open and straightforward and being clear that the problem here is not Islam, but it's Islamic extremism.
In 2015, a decade after the attacks, Khan ran for mayor of London, and his faith was back in the headline to radical Islam.
The debate got again personal and nasty. The Goldsmith camp has called Khan extreme and accused him of associating with, quote, those who seek to do our police and capital harm.
It's a pattern of behaviour.
Even the former Prime Minister David Cameron repeated the allegations.
He shared a platform with Sajil Shahid, the man who trained the ringleader of the 7/7 attacks and accused the United States of bringing 9/11 on themselves.
But the smears didn't stick.
Zach Goldsmith ran a very negative campaign that was based on what people knew was a lie.
This election was not without controversy. And I'm so proud that London has today chosen hope over fear and unity over division.
After taking the mayor's office with a comfortable majority, Khan has brought a business-like efficiency to the role, scrapping expensive vanity projects like the Garden Bridge and the new Routemaster buses, which cost £350,000 each. The former lawyer who used to fight the police in court is now praised for his close relationship with them.
We also had two successful ignitions and shutdowns of the second stage. We're now coming up on deployment of our Starlink satellites.
Donald J.
There you can
Trump
see him
is
on
calling
screen right
for
now.
a total
That should
and
be coming
complete
up
shutdown
in about
of
20
Muslims
seconds.
entering the United States.
Now, by giving the
Each of
impression
these Starlink satellites
that
are
Islam and
approximately
the West are incompatible,
260 kilograms,
you're playing into
and
the
they
hands
feature
of the
a
extremists.
compact design to
The
try to
ongoing
minimize
spat
volume.
between Khan and US President Donald Trump escalated when Trump went after Khan, misquoting him on Twitter just hours after the terrorist attacks of June 3rd, 2017. Khan's now one of the most prominent Labour politicians in the UK. In fact, a recent poll of Londoners found Khan was more trusted to keep the country safe from
During the
terrorism
close phase
than the
and,
Prime Minister or the Labour leader. His
Here comes the
story of
Starlink
going from the
satellites
son of an
released from the
immigrant
second
bus driver
stage.
to the mayor of one of the greatest cities in the world plays well with Londoners.
Very, very cool.
But can he appeal to the
Shortly,
rest
they will
of the
deploy
nation?
their solar
Has
arrays,
Khan
and
got
over
his
the
eye
next
on
few
the
days
top
and
job?
weeks, they
Is
will
the UK
distance
ready for a
themselves from each
Muslim
other
Prime
and
Minister?
use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their operational orbit at 550 kilometers above the Earth's surface.
And now that brings our webcast to a close. Thank you to the Range and the Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission. If you're interested in being part of our beta program, head over to starlink.com and sign up. Again, thanks for joining us. It's been an exciting day here, and we'll see you next time.
Expected loss of signal, Tasmania.
What does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, US Navy, and other branches of the US government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hack emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the collateral murder video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan war logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq war logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats could face real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness.
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
When it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for 5th generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network factories, where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
When people think of Vladimir Putin, they think of capital P, power. And that's exactly the impression he creates. Whether it's physical power, firing different weapons, riding in various James Bond-esque modes of transportation, or tossing hapless opponents in judo. Or political power, ruling his own country with an iron fist, crushing his political opposition, or, most recently, being accused of meddling in foreign elections for his own benefit. This is how Vladimir Putin went from a poor, tough kid in Leningrad to a KGB spy to the very symbol of modern Russia. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born in 1952 in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg. His father was a factory foreman and his mother a homemaker. It is widely said that Putin's public-facing tough guy persona can be traced back to him getting into fights when he was younger, which paved the way for him to take up judo. After getting a law degree from Leningrad State University, Putin joined the KGB Foreign Intelligence Service. He spent 16 years in the KGB. When Putin returned to Russia, he began his political career.
He went to work for
Anatoly Sobchak, who was then the mayor of St. Petersburg.
That's Leonid Bershidsky.
I'm a columnist at Bloomberg View.
Putin thrived in Sobchak's administration because
he was sort of considered pretty efficient city official at that time. He was very loyal to Sobchak.
So loyal and efficient that
he was noticed by Yeltsin's close circle.
And those people soon brought Putin over to Moscow to work in Yeltsin's administration, where he quickly climbed the political ladder.
Then, of course, he was promoted to Prime Minister of Russia.
That's Dmitry Trenin.
I am currently director of the Carnegie Moscow Center.
Around this time, Yeltsin and the people around him, the so-called family, decided that Putin would become Yeltsin's successor. And then this happened.
There are actually 10
The apartment
engines on the
bombings were
rocket.
carried out in
The
3
Merlin
Russian
vacuum
cities, killing
engine, or
293
MVAC,
people
is what
and
powers
injuring
the
more than
second stage
1,000.
of Falcon
Putin
9 to its
immediately
targeted
accused
orbit.
Chechen separatists
The
for the
MVAC can
bombings
generate
and
about
followed it up with action.
220,500 pounds of thrust at full power and can be restarted multiple times to place different payloads into different
And it worked.
After that, he
Tonight we are flying 60 Starlink satellites, which are safely enclosed
3 months
in the
later,
17-foot
Yeltsin
diameter
resigned.
payload
And on
fairing,
his way
which is
out,
that pointed
a famous
structure you
exchange.
see at the very top of the rocket. This protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during a set. Once we reach the
So
vacuum
Putin
of
took
space,
over as
we no
president.
longer need
3
the
months after
fairing,
that,
so we
won his
jettison it
first
as the
election.
second
But
stage
just because
continues
Putin
on
won
its
the
journey to
presidency,
orbit.
that didn't mean
Today
he
will
had
be the
all
first
the
time
power.
that we are
This is Michael
reusing one of our
McFaul.
fairing halves for the fourth time. The other half will be flying for the third time. Our recovery ships Go Searcher and Go Navigator are currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean and will pull the fairing halves from the water upon landing. And with that, let's check in to see how the countdown is progressing.
We are just under 8.5 minutes until
But
liftoff,
they
and leading
probably
into tonight's launch, the
miscalculated,
chief engineer
thinking
of
that
a
they
technical
could
poll
easily
had
find a way to
15 minutes
influence him.
and then the
It
launch
became
director held a
impossible
low
almost from the
launch
start.
bringing
From
the
that very
at
moment,
T-minus the 38-minute mark. Since then, Falcon 9 has been loading propellant.
That's when Putin
since
gave the oligarchs a
T-minus
choice.
35-minute mark.
Putin's way,
The vehicle
Some of
uses
those
two
people
types
from
of
the
propellant,
90s
fuel
managed to
and
figure
NOx
out
cells.
a new
For
way
fuel,
of dealing
we
with
use a
Putin
refined
and have
form of
survived.
kerosene called
Or
RP1,
prison.
and
Others
for its
could not
oxidizer,
find
we use super chilled
common
liquid
vision,
oxygen.
and
We
so
also
they
refer
lost
to
their
it as
assets.
SWAP.
Tartakovsky once was
Currently,
Russia's
RP1
richest
is fully
person worth
loaded on the
$15
second
billion,
stage,
but
and
he ran
nearly
afoul
fully loaded
of
on the
President
first stage.
Vladimir Putin and
As
spent a
for liquid
decade
oxygen,
in
we're loading
prison.
it
with
right now
domestic
on
power
both stages.
consolidated, Putin focused on
We also load
restoring Russia's
helium
global
to the vehicle,
influence.
and that
Putin
began
is the
before the
guy
webcast
who
went live.
believes
We'll
in
continue to
the
top it off until
expansionist
about a
Russian
minute and a
states,
half
and
until
Georgia
launch.
and
And we use this
Ukraine
helium
and
to
all the
maintain
other Soviet
pressure in
republics
the tanks as
that
propellant
split
is
off when
consumed
Soviet Union
throughout the
fell
mission.
apart. He still believes that their
In about 25 seconds,
traditional
engine chill will
Russian
begin. This is where
satellites,
we
a
allow a
lot of
small
his
amount of
strategy
super chilled
is
liquid
about
oxygen to
keeping
flow
them in
into
the
the
orbit.
Merlin
But
engine's
he
turbopumps
also line,
prior
take
to the
good
full
care of
fuel
Russia.
blast
That's how
to
he
avoid any
understands
thermal
it.
shocks
And
to
he
the
used
system.
annexation and
Around
invasion,
the
as well as
T-minus
oil,
5
gas,
minute
and
and 13
trade to
second
keep
mark,
former Soviet
checkouts of
republics
the
in
second
Russia's
stage
orbit.
thrust vector
In
control
2008,
actuators
Putin's 2 terms were
will
up,
begin.
and he
This is also
decided to
known
step
as the
down as
engine
president.
wiggle test.
Dmitry
We'll
Medvedev stepped in
initiate
as
these slight
president,
movements
and
to make
Putin
sure
went
that the
back to
guidance
prime
hardware
minister.
is a
But
go for
really,
flight. The first stage
He
engines
pretty
also
much
perform the
continued
same
running the
exact
country,
engine wiggle test, and this
and
happens
Medvedev
just seconds
was
before
up into
ignition.
a figurehead.
there was
The
actually a
vehicle is
period of
healthy. We are
cooperation
currently
between
working,
Russia
no
and the US
issues.
that
The
benefited
range
both
is
countries
standing
during
by and currently
Medvedev's
green for
presidency.
liftoff.
Because
The weather
Medvedev
is
did not
also
have
green
the
for
same
today's mission.
negative
All
attitude
systems
towards the
continue
West
to be go
as
for a
Putin
liftoff
did.
But when
at
Putin came back to
3:24
run for a
a.m.
third
Eastern
term, in the lead up to the 2012
Now,
election, it
Starlink
was
was
widely
designed to
believed that
help
both
meet
the
the growing
presidential
need
and
for
parliamentary
truly
elections were
high-speed,
rigged.
low-latency
Russians took to
broadband
the
that
streets.
underserved and
Putin
unserved
blamed the
areas.
protests squarely
One
on
key
America, and
advantage
more
of Starlink
specifically
is the
Secretary
ability
of
to
State
deploy the
Hillary
system
Clinton.
quickly.
He
The
believes that
Starlink
he
kit
had
contains
sent,
everything that a
in his
user
words,
needs
a
to get
signal
connected
to
to the internet,
demonstrators.
and once
Still,
they have the
Putin
kit
won
in
by a
hand,
huge
users can
margin
be
and set
connected
about
in a matter
crushing
of
the
minutes.
protest movement immediately
For
upon his
many
return to the
communities
Kremlin.
that historically
Over
have
the
had
next few
poor
years,
or
Russia's
non-existent
economy
access to the
tumbled.
internet,
Putin annexed Epidemics
The
Crimea
impacts of the
leading to
current
sanctions.
pandemic have
The
made
price of oil
day-to-day
fell
life even
drastically.
more challenging.
The ruble hit a
One
new
such
low,
community
and
is the
America
Wise County
played down
Public
Russia's
School District
influence,
in
with
rural
Obama calling
Virginia.
Russia
Now,
a
when COVID
regional
forced
power.
schools to
Despite
close
all
and
that,
resort
Putin's
to remote
approval rating
education,
remained
the
sky
community
high,
did not have the
and then an
connectivity it needed
opportunity
to
for
support
payback.
distance learning
I
for
think
its
I'd get
students.
along very well.
According to a
with
survey
Vladimir Putin.
conducted
In
by the school district,
2016, there was
40%
one
of teachers
candidate
and
who
families in
called
the area
Vladimir
had
Putin
limited
very
to no
smart.
access
Trump
to
exhibits
internet.
tolerance towards
In
Putin's
December,
actions
the
annexing
Wise County
Crimea
Public
and
School
similar
District
views on
announced its
NATO
plan
and
to provide
sanctions.
some families in the area with free Starlink service
Even though
to
Putin
promote
denies
remote
any
learning.
wrongdoing,
In GRA, we deployed the
the
Starlink
U.S. has
units
accused
to the
Russia of
community,
being
and
behind
now
the
over
leaking
40
of
homes are
20,000
now
Democratic
connected with
National
service.
Committee emails, which
We
many
are
say
currently
helped
delivering
Trump
beta
beat Hillary
service
Clinton
both
in the
domestically
presidential
and
election.
internationally,
Which leaves us
and the
here
team will
with the
continue to
possibility
push
of a
towards
President
near
Putin
global
until
coverage of the
2024,
populated world
positioning
in
Russia to be the
2021.
world power he
If you're
always
interested in
imagined
bringing
it should be.
Starlink to your home or your community, you can head over to starlink.com for more information.
We are currently 5 minutes from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. We're currently waiting for the Transport Erector, or TE, to retract away from Falcon 9. The Transport Erector is that white painted structure right next to the vehicle. In about 40 seconds, the clamp arms at the top of the vehicle will begin to open, and then the strong back will begin to recline away around the T-minus 3 minute and 39 second mark. And it will recline away about 2 degrees from Falcon 9 to its pre-launch position.
Strong back lowers begun.
And you're hearing the callouts that we're beginning that process. The strong back won't fully reach that pre-launch position until about the T-minus 3 minute and 4 second mark. The Transport Erector has a few jobs. It provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. And on screen right now, you can see the clamp arms are starting to retract away from, to open up and prepare the Transport Erector to recline away from Falcon 9. This entire process should take about another 40 seconds or so. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. The first stage should finish propellant loading around the T-minus 3 minute mark, and the second stage should finish around the T-minus 2 minute mark. And there goes the strong back, beginning to recline away from Falcon 9 to its pre-launch position about 2 degrees from the vehicle. And as we get closer to T0 at T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 is in startup. And this means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. We'll then light the Merlin engines around the T-minus 2 second mark. We use TTEB as our ignition fluid, and when it mixes with oxygen, it burns a green-colored flame. We then allow the fuel into the thrust chamber, and the engine comes to power for liftoff at T0. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather, again, remains good, and the range is also green for launch. And if you're just joining us, this is the 20th Starlink mission for SpaceX and the 6th mission overall in 2021. In just a few seconds here, we should hear the call out that LOX loading has completed on the second stage. And that will
Jack Ma
wrap up
is
the
Asia's
development
richest
loading for the
man
entire
and most
vehicle for today's
recognizable
mission.
business tycoon. He's the chairman of Alibaba, China's e-commerce giant and one of the 10 largest companies in the world. Yet he still wants more.
We know where we're going. We want to be the 5th largest economy.
Big words from the man some call Asia's Jeff Bezos. He's confident, he's charismatic, and he's definitely not the
You
average
can start to hear
CEO.
some hissing and notice some white clouds around Falcon 9. That is normal for us at this stage in the countdown. We
This
are
is how a
venting
poor school
liquid
teacher
oxygen
went from the
through
classroom to
Transport
being one of
Erector
the most
lines,
influential
and we'll continue to do
multi-billionaires
so
in the
all
world.
the way down until T0.
Ma was born in China's southeastern city Hangzhou in 1964. His parents were traditional musician storytellers. As a teenager, he started to learn English from foreign tourists after China opened up in the late 1970s.
And then for 9 years, Jack Ma hung around outside the Hangzhou Hotel, which is now called the Shangri-La. He would get up at 5 a.m. to talk to travelers.
That's Bloomberg technology reporter Yu Chen.
And I cover
We
China
are in
internet
startup.
for
Both
Bloomberg.
stages are now beginning to pressurize for
Ma
launch.
failed China's
In a
National
few seconds here,
University
we should
entrance
hear the
exam
launch
twice
director give
before
the
being
final go
admitted
for
to
launch.
local teachers' college. He graduated in 1988. He applied for 30 jobs and got rejected, including from the fast food giant KFC.
where KFC came
And
to
there's the
China
final
to
bell for
say
launch. Let's listen in to terminal count.
20
Launch as
24
Falcon 9 takes our
people
stack of
went for
Starlink
the job.
satellites into orbit.
23 people accepted. I was the only guy.
Then Ma got a job at a local university and taught English there for about 5 years, earning just $15 a month. On the side, he started a translation company with several friends. During a company trip to the US in 1995, Ma had his first encounter with the internet at a friend's place in Seattle.
I searched the first word of beer.
3, 2, 1.
I don't know why, because it's easy to spell, baby. And I see beers from Germany, beers from Japan.
So he searched for the word China instead and still couldn't find anything. And that got him thinking. He wanted to build something that would put China on the world map.
He started China Pages, a Yellow Pages-like website, but it didn't take off. Then Ma joined a government agency in Beijing to help set up a website. By 1999, the internet stock boom had gripped Wall Street, and back in his Hangzhou apartment, Ma decided to try again. With his wife and a group of friends, Ma raised $80,000 and set up Alibaba, a site that allowed businesses to sell stuff to each other.
Carrying our stack of Starlink satellites into orbit. Right now, we're currently throttling down the engines in preparation for Max Q. That is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure, where we'll experience the largest structural load.
By 2000, Alibaba had raised $25 million from investors, including Goldman Sachs and SoftBank.
He had no business plan and
Max
zero
Q.
revenue.
And there is the call out for Max Q. We've just passed the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure on Falcon 9. In about a minute, we
in
have
2003, Alibaba started Taobao, a platform for individual sellers to trade with each other, and publicly declared war against eBay, who had started to make a foray into China.
Jack Ma has this famous saying that Alibaba is a crocodile in the Yangtze River, whereas eBay is a shark in the ocean. And if they fight eBay in the ocean, then they'll lose. But if they fight them in the Yangtze River, then they have a home base advantage.
Second engine start 1, also known as SES-1.
In 2007, just 1 year after it forced eBay out of China, Alibaba debuted its business-facing division on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, but it delisted 5 years later as its performance sagged.
The first event,
but in 2014, Alibaba raised $25 billion in the world's biggest IPO in New York.
Everybody should have a dream. What if that dream comes true?
After achieving dominance in the business of e-commerce in China, Alibaba has been building an internet empire worth $472 billion, with businesses in cloud computing, online video streaming, movie production, healthcare, sports, retail, and even news media.
Alibaba buying into South China Morning Post really raised eyebrows. This is the largest English newspaper in Hong Kong, and it shows that Jack Ma's ambitions weren't limited to e-commerce. He wanted to influence not just Chinese users, but also overseas users as well.
The first stage separated from the second stage.
The US has criticized Alibaba for allowing companies to sell counterfeit and poorly made goods, but in China, it enjoys the favor of China's government. It's part of Ma's company philosophy.
In love with the government, but don't marry with them.
Jack Ma is an extremely fortunate man for jumping on the internet sector so early. Note that this is a person who has no coding skills at all. He's a natural showman and a gifted public speaker and really able to convince others to believe in his vision.
Ma's vision of growing Alibaba to be the world's 5th largest economy faces strong competition at home and abroad. It will require more than just naked ambition and charisma. But Ma is great at getting himself in the right place at the right time. So far, it served him well.
Now, after that beautiful launch that we just barely couldn't see, Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit. Stage 1 is going to execute 2 burns in order to make its way back down to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite, and this will help slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn. Now this is a single engine burn that will bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to land on our drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
Acquisition of signal Bermuda.
You can see in that video there that our second stage is looking good. Its nozzle is glowing from that burn that it's currently in. And again, our second stage is carrying our 60 Starlink satellites to LEO, or low Earth orbit. That's about 550 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. For reference, most satellites are actually in GEO, or geostationary orbit, which is over 1,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. And the reason that we have our Starlink satellites in this lower orbit is that it reduces the round-trip time that it takes for data to travel between the user and the satellite, reducing what is known as latency and improving performance in activities like video calls and online